I was so depressed that I told God if I wasn't sent a sign that I couldn't go another day. And my grandma that night visited me in my dream. I have been able to communicate with my guides before I even had language for it. I remember being in elementary school and seeing orbs in my backyard for the first time. There was a lot of death that was happening around me at the time. My uncles and my aunt and my great grandma all passed away within a short amount of time of each other. And so I was processing death without having any religious or spiritual background. And so when I saw the orbs, I just had an innate knowing of what they were. And I was fascinated by them. They felt like, just a comfort. They've been with me my entire life. And I remember at that time too, I was just processing on my own as like a 6-7-year-old, and I wrote a poem about my uncle where, like I said, I had no religious or spiritual background. I didn't even grow up going to church, but I remember I wrote the poem and it was just flooding through me. I remember writing it in, my parents had this tiny little closet office, and I remember sitting at the desk just writing, and it was pouring out of me. I was talking about my uncle being like the blades of grass, the clouds in the sky, the bee that was buzzing, and him being like intrinsically a part of everything in the universe now that he's passed away. My family was dumbfounded as to like how I came up with the concept, and they just were shocked. They were like, how did you come up with this poem? It just really was showing me that our connection with our guides just arrives on its own. And it's not about having a gift for it. Like, we all innately are connected to the beyond. It's just about when we are meant to put our focus on it. And everyone has their own timing. And then there was this one time when my grandma passed away in February of 2022. And this was months before. This is the beginning of when her health started to decline. I was living with my partner at the time, my past partner in LA. And I got up in the morning to go to the bathroom. And as I'm walking back into the bedroom, I just collapsed to the ground and I am sobbing. And I just have this instantaneous knowing that my grandma was hurt and in pain and that something was wrong. I just knew. And I felt it. And I felt her distress. And my partner just came rushing over and he was like, "What's wrong? What's going on? Are you okay?" And I explained to him, I said, "I just know my grandma is not okay. Something bad happened. I think she's hurt." And he was like, "Okay, well, we're gonna call. We'll see like if she's okay." He's like, "She's probably okay." And so I call and my aunt picks up the phone and she tells me that on the way to the bathroom, when my grandma was going to the bathroom, she fell and she hurt herself very badly and couldn't get up and had to go to the hospital. And that was a wild experience because it was really showing me that, the intuition, it bypasses logic and it lives even beyond the body. Like, it lives in our souls and it is communicated through the body, not the mind. My grandma and I were always so close. She was the first person that I ever saw before anyone else when I was born. And we've always had a really strong connection, but that was almost like what it felt like the beginning and the initiation of her and I like connecting beyond the mind, and almost like what I see now as like an initiation of like her being my soul guide before she passed, because then several months later she did pass. Your intuition is the highest intelligence and it lives in your soul. When I asked for a sign, when I was really depressed and at one of my lowest points, my partner and I of 8 years had broken up. I was living alone, struggling financially in a new state and city, hadn't made any friends and wasn't connected with my family. And I was just going through like one unfortunate event after another and just feeling like the walls were closing in on me and feeling like my life had no point, and that if honestly something were to happen to me that no one would find out for a while, because like I never heard from anyone. So I asked God, I prayed before bed and I said, God, please show me that I have a purpose. Please give me a reason to be here, to understand why I'm here. And yeah, my dream was just unbelievable. I normally experience my dreams as me just watching a movie of myself, so I don't have the experience of having sensation and feelings in my dreams. So when I was with my grandma, it's like it wasn't even her body, it was like her soul. And when I hugged her, like I knew it was her. It was like what her soul feels like beyond the physical body. And she took me through this very detailed dream of my life and like showing me different things, and it was incredible. And because I had prayed for it and said I needed a sign, and then my grandma came through in that way, I knew I needed to have it interpreted. So I asked someone that I met, a friend through Instagram. Her name is Candace, with Eldest Tarot, and she's amazing. And she interpreted this dream for me. And in one part of the dream, as my grandma was taking me through these different places, I saw a bag on a stairwell, a plastic bag, and inside of it were all of these cards and letters for my family, messages from her, and it was in her handwriting. It was so cool because I have always loved her handwriting when she was here, and I have a bunch of letters and cards from her still. What Candace imparted on me was that how rare it is for people to actually be able to read in their dream. And it's like, don't quote me on this, but it's somewhere between like 2 and 1% of like that ever happening, or of anyone ever being able to do that. And so I was like, wow, this is very important. What Candace had interpreted for me, my grandma was communicating to me that we do have communication and that she is communicating with me beyond and for other people. That dream was pivotal for me. Like, it's honestly like what kept me here. And she and my other guides have been able to communicate with me through so many other different ways. It's made life so beautiful because you know, the universe is always communicating with us. It is one big language. And my grandma, she kept showing up for me. There was something that Candace actually taught me when channeling my guides for me at first, where she taught me about a pendulum and communicating with my guides. And so one day I was going through another difficult experience, and many months later, and I had this intuitive feeling to go to this metaphysical store, and I saw a pendulum and I just felt called to get it. And so this was the day of the Super Bowl of 2025, and I'm sitting on my bed and I start talking to the pendulum, and I'm not even thinking about like communicating with anyone in particular. I'm just asking questions. And then I've always talked to my grandma's picture. So I was like simultaneously just talking to my grandma's picture while holding it. And all of a sudden, like, I could feel that the pendulum was being moved on its own. Like, it felt like someone was holding it at the bottom and moving it. It was crazy. And then I could like see like this like glowing orb energy that was around it. And I started asking her questions. I asked her, I said, are the Chiefs going to win the Super Bowl? And she said no. And then I asked her if the Eagles were going to win, and she said yes. And this was before the Super Bowl had even started. And then I just started asking her questions about my life and discovering that like we're not meant to do this alone, and that, yeah, we all have guides. We're not going to get the full picture because the full picture is being painted, but like we are meant to not live in the dark and not to make choices alone. And so it's an ongoing living relationship where, like I said, the universe is always communicating to us, like things that you read or see, if you tune into it, like it's all right there in front of us. And so even with every rock bottom, my guides have been there. When I look back through my entire life, like everything was divinely guided, divinely chosen. Yeah, and maybe you've never seen an orb. Maybe your intuition feels really quiet or non-existent, but they're there. It's all about, just tuning your focus to it. And once that I tuned my focus to these things, I started to see like, oh wow, this has always been there. It's always been around me. And that's available to everyone. Your guides, they're not just meant to communicate with you by showing up as a butterfly or a bird. That is one way of them letting you know that they're here. I'm curious, have you ever had a moment where you felt like someone was there with you and was guiding you? Tell me in the comments below. I'll see you next week.